All right. So, welcome everybody. This is a special edition, a special panel for Cyberweek. Cyberweek, as you know, is part of the National Center for Technology and Dispute Resolution with a really robust schedule all week, looking at different aspects of online dispute resolution. We've had discussions about blockchain and metaverse and all sorts of things, as well as good old-fashioned Zoom arbitration or Zoom mediation. So many different iterations, a really broad scope. Now, one of the things that we talked about earlier today on a different panel was the importance of the next generation. You know, all of us are going to be gone and retired, and we are depending on the next generation. And so I'm exceedingly excited to have the next generation right here. And at The Ohio State University, Moritz College of Law, we do have a fantastic dispute resolution program with fantastic students. And this is a showcase of those fantastic students. So I welcome the panel. We have Chika Onyebuchi, we've got Brittany Munn, and we have Noah Katz. They all are here to discuss various areas of the future, a peek into the future of ODR. So without further ado, I am going to be quiet. I will keep the queue. I will keep track of the chat, and I will let the students take it away.
Thank you, Professor Schmitz. But I am Chika Onyebuchi, currently a third-year law student at OSU, Moritz College of Law. Generally, I'm just interested in all ADR, getting my alternative dispute resolution certificate while I'm here, and technology just a part of that, being the generation I'm in. So that is my general interest in technology. But let's get into this presentation. I'll be talking about the potential use for AI in ODR. So it should be exciting. Just as some background, I just want to clarify what I mean when I say AI. I know the term AI gets thrown out there a lot. Sometimes you see a simple code and you call it AI, you know, like a calculator is a simple code, but that's not AI. You can run a little program on C++ or Python, and that's a program, but it's not AI. There are also algorithms, which are probably like the most closest thing that people get confused with AI to be. Like, yes, Netflix can tell you the shows that you want to watch more than you even realize it yourself, but that too is an algorithm and not AI. When we say AI, we're talking about something that's dynamic, something that's really mimicking human intelligence. So that's what I mean when we say AI, the dynamic use of human intelligence. So I just want to first off say that this presentation is tailored to mediation. So I'm not really like attributing this to arbitration or negotiation, just because in those humans make the decisions. So in mediation, the mediator can use AI as a tool, but the AI would never be part of making the solutions. It just would help the mediator, the neutral mediator who's not actually part of the dispute, have a tool in their book bag that they can use. Just like having a notebook or having little checklist in your back pocket, AI can be used as a tool to augment the experience, both for the mediator and for the participants. So as of this time, it's not meant to replace human mediators. We are still the best people, beings, entities to understand real human issues and help humans get to solutions. So I just wanted to put that out there just for anybody out there that's kind of hesitant about the use of technology in mediation. And I know there are people out there, so I just want to make that disclaimer. So let's talk about some of the AI out there right now that's being used or being studied, but it's not yet being implemented or could be implemented in the mediation process. First, we have emotional AI. There's actually a professor here at The Ohio State University, Professor Martinez, who's doing this research and study on emotional AI. And I'm just going to read right from the slide just so I get the exact verbiage. decodes muscular articulations in the face. In layman's terms, it picks up facial expressions. Facial recognition software, it does all the eye tracking, pays attention to all of the face, all the facial interactions, can tell if you're getting a little red, if you're getting a little green, if you're getting a little blue. So it's a very dynamic program right now. Of course, there are issues when it comes to cultural differences of people from different cultural backgrounds, where some facial interactions, some facial expressions can mean different things. So of course, that's all dependent on the data that you give the AI to assess. So the best way to prevent against any like bias in the software or in the AI program is to give them a very diverse range of data from all around the world if possible. But how this works, like I said, it picks up on any facial reaction you're having, and it kind of just alerts the person that it's called sentiment recognition was happening. And why I don't call it emotional recognition, because though the AI is able to pick up on those muscular articulations, it can't tell you what that is. Like I may make a face that I'm mad, but it says, okay, something happening. There's something happening over there with Chika. I don't know what it is, but look over there to Chika. Can they tell me? Can they tell you that I'm mad? No, but they're alerting you something's going on. So it's up and coming, but it's still a good thing that's useful in mediation, especially because, you know, part of the role as a mediator, when you're taking the stories of each of the parties, you want to give them that full and undivided focus, but the other party is still in the room and they may be making reactions on the side that are important to pick up, but you don't want to distract from the party you're actually speaking to, but you want to pick up on everything as much as possible to make a productive mediation. So this could help so much in the mediation process. So there's that one, emotional AI, and that's with face-to-face interaction, but we also know that mediations can happen over the phone, and it's not always face-to-face. So next we have a program called Cogito, voice analysis AI. Currently it's being used in call centers, so where there's really absolutely no face-to-face interaction, just an upset party calling to try to get student Prime when they're in college instead of the full Amazon Prime membership because they want that student discount. Maybe that's getting a little bit too personal for you, but sometimes it happens. But what Cogito does, it's able to, in real time, it's able to process your natural language, picks up on tone, inflections, any tenseness in the voice, but it can also track the dynamics of the conversation. For example, it could tell the person at the call center, perhaps, that they're speaking too fast or they're not speaking fast enough based on those tones and inflections they're picking up from the person on the other side of the line. You know, so maybe I say something and it can tell that I'm maybe skeptical of something, or that you should be more sympathetic, or maybe I'm getting bored, or maybe I'm shy, or maybe I'm nervous, or maybe I'm just disheveled, and you have to like really just maybe cut the call right there and say maybe we should meet at a new time. But this program also gives you those alerts, telling you what they think that is, and they will tell you maybe the person is skeptical, maybe they're confused, maybe you should slow down. It will tell you maybe this person is confused. You use that information and say, maybe I should slow down, maybe I should go back and rehash some of the points that maybe they're confused about. So this could be very useful in that pre-mediation stage that really has to occur to get the parties to the table to begin with. You know, you're calling the parties, you want to, like, while doing intake, And maybe it could be like a domestic violence mediation type deal, and over the phone, you really can't pick up on all the things you might be able to pick up on if you were in person. So to have like that kind of virtual assistant in the room with you could be very helpful. And in call centers, they've found that it reduces handling time, increases the first time resolution. So you don't have to call Amazon back about the student prime and say, I don't know, the charge hasn't happened. I'm still getting charged the full price and not the student price. And overall, it improve customer satisfaction. So those are the two programs I really want to talk about because it really hits both the verbal and nonverbal responses that could help mediators catch things that they would otherwise miss if that was in the room. And, just warns them like, hey, you're missing something. So it really comes back to AI being used as that tool rather than not a replacement, just a tool to help the mediator be better, possibly more efficient. But then it also helps the mediator be a better mediator because now you're picking up on more things. You can interpret it differently. You can implement what the AI can't. So that's where we are right now. See how I'm doing on time. I'll go a little further. This is really the main point of the presentation. But if we're going a little further in the future, or far, far farther in the future, we have to consider what could happen next. AI is undoubtedly better at collecting and learning more efficiently than any human being out there. So that is something that's undeniable that we have to realize. And that's why the potential for it is so exciting in some ways. And the only problem right now is that they're not able to implement that data that they collect. And the current solution is humans, but perhaps let's say somewhere in the future, far, far future, the implementation problem is solved. So now we have AI that has the emotional analysis, the real-time voice analysis, the data collection and learning that comes with mimicking human intelligence. And now they can implement it too. Now they kind of have the potential to be better than a human mediator, which is a hot take. I know. I hear your responses in the Ethernet. I hear them, but we have to consider some of the benefits of AI that they don't get tired, they don't get fatigued, they don't have bad days, they don't have kids or dogs or cats, they don't lose focus, they never forget. And I think most interestingly, people have been found to trust robots a little bit more in some studies. And why is that? It's because though a mediator is said to be neutral and impartial and unbiased, we know naturally that humans are not neutral, not impartial, and often have biases. So it's like when you go to that doctor's appointment and they ask you, how many alcoholic beverages do you consume a week? And we think, okay, well, maybe I have a glass of wine like every night, and then on the weekends, and maybe that gets up to like 10, and you don't think that's too bad. But when you say it out loud, it's like you don't want to seem like you have an alcohol abuse issue, so maybe you say 3 when it's really 10. And though the doctor's only trying to do what's best for your health, you lie to them. But if it was a robot asking you, or AI asking you, or just a non-human entity asking you, you would actually say 10 because like they can't judge you. Like, so you're going to be more honest. And if this can be used in mediation, if an AI is that entity gathering that information, they're going to be more honest upfront. When we know, if anybody has been in a mediation, that a lot of the issues occur when that impasse that nobody understands why is happening. It's because somebody is not being as honest as they could be. Then the mediator would have to like parse out why that is, caucus, separate the parties, speak to one, figure out like, oh, you didn't want to say this in front of the other person, and you didn't want to say this in front of me an hour ago, but now you do. Thank you for that. But also, it's been a long time coming. So it could just make mediations more efficient in the way that if you're more honest, more upfront, you get all that information in as soon as possible, and then you're able to get to that agenda setting and solution stage quicker, which of course officially isn't always the goal of mediation, but it can help, certainly. Like, parties get tired, mediators get tired. So if that process can just run a little bit more smoothly and AI could be a solution, it's up for consideration.
Really
That's all
interesting.
I got.
No, really interesting stuff. I'm already it's good fuel for questions. But before we take questions, I think we'll go ahead and we'll do questions at the end, if that sounds good to everybody, and get a dialogue going. Really interesting stuff. Thank you so much. Now we're going from, I mean, we're looking into the future here, guys. So we start with AI. Next, we're going to talk about the metaverse. So for that, we have Brittany Munn.
My name is Brittany Munn. I am also a third-year law student at Ohio State University. I'm also getting my certificate in dispute resolution and have just a general interest in both technology and alternative dispute resolution. So I'm going to be talking about ODR and the metaverse. Regardless of whether or not we agree with the metaverse and its platform, far too many steps have already been taken in its direction to stop anything. But to develop even a revolutionary dispute resolution forum in a virtual world, it's imperative to look back at the history of the metaverse. So Mark Zuckerberg once said that the metaverse is the next chapter of the internet, and an embodied internet where you are in the experience, you're not just looking at it. The metaverse is not a new idea at all. Neil Stephenson actually coined the term in his 1982 novel, Snow Crash. That novel envisions a virtual reality in which people use digital avatars of themselves to explore the online world. Facebook then capitalized on the metaverse very, very early on, back in October of 21, rebranding itself as Meta. One of their main purposes is to define the metaverse with a feeling of presence. So what exactly is the metaverse? It's an interactive three-dimensional virtual world. It combines the virtual reality, augmented reality, and digital hologram technology. Users can occupy space, they can live within the digital universe, and they can easily do anything that they can do in real life. They can hang out with friends, they can even trade land, buildings, or other digital assets. Technology advancements are rising at an increasingly high rate. JP Morgan signaled in a report that the metaverse is a $1 trillion opportunity. Large corporations, even including McDonald's and Walmart, have already filed trademark applications to explore some of these virtual worlds. The metaverse allows companies of all shapes and sizes, including PwC, Nike, Hulu, Gap, and others, to create realistic workspaces in these digital realms. Some companies are already building virtual offices. They include Meta, Apple, Snapchat, Amazon, Nike, Tinder, and Microsoft even plans to integrate a platform within Teams for immersive spaces. So as we saw with the pandemic, hybrid work is probably here to stay now, but it doesn't have to be something that has people lose interaction with other people. A growing number of companies do believe that the solution to hybrid work is now in the metaverse. So with a new virtual world or virtual reality such as the metaverse comes legal issues. From encouraging suicide to even sexual assault to trademark infringement and data breach, disputes between anonymous parties are rapidly increasing. Some of these legal issues do include cyber trespassing, deception, obscenity, harassment, violence. Cyber criminals are targeting metaverse investors with things like phishing scams. Currently, though, there's no set of rules or regulations that do apply to legal issues that arise in the metaverse. So it's also unclear how legal issues will be resolved with respect to all of this. This becomes very troubling because of the separation between a person's virtual identity and their real physical identity in the physical world. Avatar users can behave in ways that they never would have, and they're not even possible in the real world. So what it means to experience harm in the digital world then is vastly different than experiencing harm in the physical world. So laws that may be okay in the physical world probably won't be okay then in a world like the metaverse. Litigation resolving disputes is problematic, but a lot of agreements are already being signed electronically. So while metaverse laws probably should not mirror physical world laws, if they do, litigation regarding these disputes still has problems. The legal system in the physical world is based on geography, but time, location, and identity do become very fluid perceptions in the metaverse, where anonymous users from around the world are interacting with each other. So I guess what punishment exists for anonymous users that are committing criminal acts, or other questions that might arise are what remedies exist for a party who brings a civil claim, or how do you even know who to sue if the avatar is anonymous, or what court would have jurisdiction? Jurisdiction does create a large hurdle for litigating metaverse disputes. It's nearly impossible to discover the identities of the parties and to compel them to one jurisdiction when harm may occur in multiple jurisdictions due to the metaverse's cross-border nature. Judges are not best suited for resolving these disputes, as most are generalists who may not even know what the metaverse is. But in arbitration, parties can choose an arbitrator with the requisite expertise. And because the metaverse is a complicated virtual world, arbitrators with expertise in the area will provide more fair and equitable decisions with their knowledge. And any arbitrator can be a part of this process then, and everyone can still remain anonymous. Those that operate in the metaverse may also then feel more trust in an arbitrator in the same venue, which would be in the metaverse rather than in maybe a physical world court. A new revolutionary dispute resolution system must be constructed then for the metaverse. It should be based in part on online dispute resolution. Rules that will govern interaction in the metaverse must be defined by the contract signed to participate. Most employment and consumer contracts already do contain arbitration clauses that specify the resolution process should a dispute happen to arise. So we already have some of these processes already in place. When first joining a metaverse platform, users must agree then to the platform's terms of service, which are legally binding documents anyway, and they should contain an arbitration clause. Parties must also abide by the terms of the agreement when entering into a contract with someone in the metaverse. Arbitration processes can be directly incorporated into these agreements, removing issues of jurisdiction. Arbitrators can be anonymous in order to sync with the anonymity of the metaverse. But of course, disclosures will still be required. Because it still remains essential to protect the impartiality of the arbitration process, to do this, there must be an administrative body that would have to oversee the arbitration and arbitrators and know the identity of arbitrators in order to check their neutrality. So these are just some ideas for an online dispute resolution platform that could be used for the metaverse. The metaverse is still very new, and I don't think it'll fully be out there for another couple of years, if even that short. But because everything is increasing so rapidly and technology is continuing to increase so rapidly, these are a lot of the legal issues and things that need to start becoming the forefront of discussion so that we don't have a virtual world with no laws, no regulations, and no way to resolve disputes that are inevitable. So that is all that I have.
Yeah, well, we see for sure all of this great. We see all this data, right? We're talking about use of data for AI. We're talking about facial, even sentiment analysis. We're talking about metaverse and what might be happening there. And again, all the data, which raise big time privacy questions. So for that, we're going to have Noah Katz.
Okay. So to start out, I have a little poem. Privacy is control over your information. How is data used in your organization? Some data use might require consent. What data was collected and where was it sent? So, all right. Good way to get started there. So, first of all, so what is privacy, and then how does it relate to online dispute resolution? So privacy law, really at the end of the day, is about control. It's about helping consumers maintain control over how businesses and the government interact and treat their personal data. So this can be done by limiting the type of data collected, having limits on who you can share it with, making sure it's not being kept for too long. And the next question then is, well, what is data? What is personal data? So personal data is really, it comes in two different varieties. One of them is obvious personal data, something that actually identifies a person, like a name. Another type of personal data, though, that can't be overlooked is something that indirectly identifies you. So let's say maybe it's a phone number. So by just seeing a phone number, that wouldn't necessarily, you can't, think of someone just with that phone number. But if you had that phone number and, you have information about them, especially if it's combined with some other type of information like their name. Okay, so then moving a little bit into just questions about how we're using data. So some of the things to think about, and this is true for really anything, and it's also true for online dispute resolution. But it's important to ask just some basic questions when you're running on some kind of online dispute resolution technology. For example, what are our products and services providing? So let's say that you're working in the family law space. You're helping a couple work through their divorce arrangements, and that's the product you're providing. Well, then the next question is, how do those products use data? So maybe for that divorce case, you're putting in lots of information about finances. You're putting in lots of information about your children. You're putting in health information. There's so much information that could very reasonably be used. And then where is that data coming from? First of all, who's entering it in? Is it coming from a reputable source? But also maybe it's coming from not just directly from that person entering in information. There's also something called metadata, which means data about data. And that might be an aspect of it. Maybe there's information about location, about where you're logging in from, information about the type of device you're using. And then a very important thing to think about is whose data shared with. So you could imagine that some advertisers and the government, et cetera, might be really interested in a divorce case. With all that information there, they might really like to see exactly where you're meeting, to drop off the kids, exactly what kind of services you're using, where they're being sent to school, very personal health information. The list goes on and on. And so who is that data being shared with? And sometimes it's being shared with companies that, and places that you don't even realize, because a lot of the times if you download some, for example, if you are starting an app and you download sort of some basic code, you just start with sort of some basic builder block code. A lot of the times that builder block code already has some really important personal, it automatically collects location data, for example, even though you yourself don't necessarily need to collect location data. It's just something to think about with some of those off the shelf kind of coding materials there. And then, so why is data collected? There's usually 3 good reasons to collect data. One of them is consent, meaning the person agreed that you can have it. Another one is a contract. So the most key example of a contract is you say you want, you tell Amazon you want something delivered to your house. You have to give them information about your address in order to drop that off. That information is part of their contract. They have to know your address in order to drop it off at your front door. So next thing to think about, legitimate interests. So this is kind of a little bit ambiguous, but basically anything that you've kind of weighed the benefits and the costs. It gives you a little bit of flexibility there, but things like maintaining your website, that you just need to know basically what device is logging into the website in order to give that person the best user experience. That's not necessarily collecting too much data, or keeping basic records, or communicating with customers, or maybe sharing things that the government might need certain information, etc. Okay, so now what are things that you're just totally good that your company does these practices and you really don't need to worry about data, about privacy, or if you do have to worry about privacy, it's very minimal. So for example, if no personal data is collected, which is probably pretty rare, if you're online, data is collected. But in a theoretical world, if no personal information is collected, then you're good to go for sure. But even if you have a website, for sure things are going to be collected, but usually you don't need to go too overboard depending on what that website does. But if it's just a basic website about information, then you might just need to have a privacy policy. What states are you working in? What locations? Are you in Europe, and you have to comply with the GDPR? Are you in California, and you have to think about you know, the CPRA or the CCPA and soon to be the CPRA, or you know, for example, some of the other options here, you only collect information for those core services, like you need a credit card, you know, credit card information to take payments, you need an address to take shipments, things like that. And this is a really big one, is personal data encrypted or tokenized, which means basically, yeah, you collect personal data, but if it's hacked, if it's broken into, it's sort of protected by an encryption, or it's protected by, it's tokenized, meaning all the personal parts of the data are replaced with just like a number. So they're meaningless without being able to apply back, you know. So that's a really big key of something that, and a good thing is if data is hacked, but it's encrypted, most of the time, almost all the laws say that you don't have to do anything about it because that person can't access it without the key. And then, you know, you're deleting data that's no longer needed. Some things to think about, maybe you should slow down. Maybe you're collecting, you know, location data. That's something to think about there. Or you do business in those certain areas like California, Colorado, Virginia. Those Colorado and Virginia also have privacy laws, or in Europe, you're collecting data for your own marketing purposes. So that's maybe something that you might want to specify, you know, not a big deal, but again, just kind of a slow down, something you might want to specify in your privacy policy. Or data is collected for non-essential purpose, or it's kept beyond its useful life. That's arguable whether that's in the slow down area or that's even in the stop area, the next slide. So we'll jump to that.
And did you want to show
okay.
Did you want to show the slide?
I'm showing it right now, right?
Nope. So I was just in case you did want to share your screen, I wasn't
sorry.
sure. Oh, you're fine.
Oh my goodness, I didn't do that.
Actually,
I'm so sorry.
Actually it was fine because yeah, it was good.
Okay. Okay. Now it's shared. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So the next thing to think about is stop here. You know, some privacy issues that you really, not necessarily you have to stop, but you should stop, you know, look both ways and then go. So for example, you know, you're collecting biometric data. That could be a big red flag, especially if you're in Illinois, and also just ethically, you know, why are you collecting information about, you know, like Chika talked about with, you know, the intonation of someone's voice, and you're collecting a lot of potentially very identifiable information, and biometric data can't be, you can't really say that, tokenize that or anything. That's who you are fundamentally, is your body. That's something that is very personal data. You're working with GDPR, sensitive data like race, gender, religion, sex life, biometrics, genetics, physical appearance, so political beliefs, union membership, just all things to think about, which you might very well collect, you know, for things like a divorce case has probably a lot of that information. So you get information from children, which definitely might be very relevant for online dispute resolution. And children data has some, especially in California, but also nationally, there's the children's privacy law. Financial information, you sell data to advertisers, or it's in some of these locations like China, Russia, Iran, that are infamous for their poor privacy protections. Privacy policies, so just if you just have a basic website, you know, what should you include on your privacy policy? Types of data, you know, what types of data you collect, how you collect it, the purpose, different security measures, who you're sharing data with, how long you keep it, contact information if people have more questions. You might have to have data rights, which mean people can get in and, you know, access their data or change their data or even erase their data. That's true in California and the EU. Cookie banner. Okay. So consent. This is important for something like sending marketing emails where you're collecting data and it's not for something that someone would, it's not for a contract. It's not like you're giving, you know, Amazon your address so they can deliver you a package. It's, you know, something that was sort of sending marketing emails, something maybe a little bit beyond what you would normally expect a company to do. So there you should have some kind of consent, freely given, specific, informed, unambiguous, affirmative, easy to withdraw. And it can also often given, you'll see a little checkbox when you set up your account to get marketing emails. But if it's needed to perform the contract, like you need your Amazon needs your address to deliver you a package, you don't need consent for that. And then just a big question overall for privacy is, why are we doing this? Do we really need it? I was just listening to a podcast this week that was about some kind of flashlight app that you could turn, like I guess before the iPhone came out with the flashlight on your home screen, there was a flashlight app, and it was actually selling location data. Every time that you would use this flashlight, it was selling your location data. Why the heck were they doing that? That it's just something that when a person uses a flashlight app, they don't assume that their location is going to be tracked, and they definitely don't assume it's going to be sold to advertisers. So just why are we doing it? And then if there is an underlying reason, is it the best way? So I'll use an extreme example. Let's say you're using social security number to identify a person. Okay, well, there might be a better way to do that. Identifying a person's important, but maybe you could have a code, something that's not as personal as a social security number, and it accomplishes the same purpose. So even if you need something for a legitimate purpose, are there other more privacy friendly ways to do it? And then also, are there security measures that you can take, tokenize data, etc., keep data local, things like that. And then when you kind of need some additional help, and you should really phone a friend, you use biometrics, you need a little bit of help there working through some of the privacy implications. Health information, especially if you're working with, like a health insurance company, and you might have to follow HIPAA, and then other types of sensitive information, just something really, not that you can't use them, but you should just sort of probably seek additional legal help to work through how to do that in the best and most compliant way. And with that, thank you.
Really interesting stuff. Excellent. So first of all, I want to put it out to thank you guys. That was really interesting, and lots of stuff to chew on here for the audience. So before I jump in with a question, I want to see if there's any hands raised. If someone does have a question, you can go ahead and just unmute yourself and jump in, or raise your hand, whichever you prefer. So I think I might go ahead and call on Bill Froelich because he's in the house. Bill, do you have any questions? I'm going to jump right in. So the first question I have is kind of going back to AI and what that might look like, Chika. So I'm thinking it through. It was a lot to sort of noodle and kind of wrap my brain around. So if you're sitting there as you're part of the mediation, for example, and you're a human mediator, how would it work? Would it be, for example, on your desktop that you would get notification that maybe somebody is feeling something or having some kind of sentiment? Or, when you if you could design the perfect system to best use AI, do you have any ideas on what that would look like?
The best use, I think, personally, would probably be via Zoom or just a video, because that way it's kind of hidden. Also doesn't seem like a barrier. We talk about the barriers to mediation. You having that notebook right in front of you, or having the laptop or iPad, and you don't in person. We try to get away, hide the notebook under the table a little bit, or just not use laptops or iPads. But when it's your computer that has the video, I could have been reading off my notes on a sticky note on my laptop, and you never would have known, because I'm using my laptop. I'm in the video. So if I'm getting alerts, if you're sending me messages in this chat, Cogito or the emotional AI could alert you in the chat. You just take a look at it, you'd be looking around the room or anywhere else, pick up on that and implement it right into the mediation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I could imagine kind of an API or something like that, where it's kind of built into the system by virtue of a separate, using a different provider or something along those lines. Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, it does actually, though, raise some related privacy questions. So Noah, to that end, I want to bring in the sort of privacy implications. Do you think this is the kind of thing where if you were, let's say you're in a mediation, you're a party, and this is being used on you, do you need to have notice?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think that it's definitely important that, first of all, I want to say, I really liked what Chika had to say in her presentation that, you know, maybe it is actually a better solution in some ways, as long as people know about it, you know, so it might be really important to know that information if you're looking off screen, and that shouldn't just be like, well, there's privacy issues, don't do it, you know. You know, there's a lot of ways you can still do things, but just do things in the right way. So yeah, as long as people know about it and the technology works. I mean, I think there's some questions, you know, where it's like tracking your eyes, that sometimes you just look away from the screen and then it says gotcha, you know. So you want to make sure the technology works, but assuming it works, then you know, and it's actually doing what it should and people know about it, then I'm all for it. So
Yeah, I mean, even in family ODR, for example, I could see like with triaging, trying to pick up on things that are happening that maybe sometimes humans aren't as good as we think we are at kind of knowing what's happening. So using AI to help with that, I think could be a good thing. You know, oh, we have a hand up. Tommy, go ahead.
Yes, hello. I am currently working towards my master's degree in conflict management at Kennesaw State University, and I am very encouraged by what I've seen here in these three presentations, especially Chika's and Noah's, regarding how emotional perception might be gauged by AIs, because I have a vision impairment, so if I were to be conducting a mediation, I might not be able to pick up on some of those other cues that other people that have more uniform vision might be able to. So I just wanted to share that that I'm greatly encouraged, and I also would like to know how universally designed these technologies are as they relate to emotion perception. Thank you.
Excellent question. Chika, did you want to take that or?
Yeah, sure. Just thank you for that note. I'm actually gonna, if you don't mind, take a note of that. Just the next time I do this presentation, I want to like involve the implications of somebody who may be visually impaired and why that could come in too. So I love that. But as far as the emotional AI goes, I know it's rather, I don't know too much about it. Professor Martinez here. It is rather new. It's not, the emotional AI is not currently being implemented. It's more of like just a research project right now. It's the Cognito voice analytics software programming that's being actually used currently in call centers. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. I'm somewhat concerned in that the technology is increased to such a degree that it's this accurate, but it's still, I guess, reassuring to know that people are able to fall back on it if something arises, and a conclusion isn't being reached as quickly as it could be with these technologies.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I will say that we need to do more and do better to really think about universal design. And it is absolutely one of the key areas that needs to be worked on with ODR. And I really think there's a lot of advancement. So really, thank you so much for your question. So I see a question in the chat for Brittany. So do you want to take it away, Bill?
I mean, if you want me to, I mean, I just thought, you know, in the metaverse, Brittany said that there are corporations like McDonald's and Starbucks popping up, and I don't really know how that works, but I believe you. But should our community mediation centers popping up metaverse? They're on Facebook. I assume they are not, but should they? Should we have, you know, maybe a enterprising law mediation clinical program should set up a mediation center in the metaverse to mediate any and all cases? And of course, Noah, I imagine you have some privacy concerns about that.
I'm sure there will be privacy concerns about what I'm going to say, so no, definitely feel free to jump in after. I haven't seen anything regarding community mediation centers popping up in the metaverse, but I do think that that would be a really good idea to have them in there. Because I do, even though laws might look different and disputes might look different, they still are going to be, at least in some realm, very similar to the disputes that we do see in the physical world. And community mediation centers have proven to be very effective in resolving a lot of different disputes. But with that said, I do think there still needs to be the same anonymity that can come with, for example, arbitration in the metaverse, because you are still staying anonymous regardless of what you're doing in the metaverse. You're still going to have an avatar that's different than your personality in the physical world. So if we do incorporate these community mediation centers into the metaverse, there would still need to be a way to keep it anonymous. But I don't at all think that means you can't have a mediator in a community mediation center with a group of people that are having a dispute. And I don't think there's any reason why you can't mediate an issue in the metaverse.
Are there privacy issues, Noah?
Yeah, no, it's you know, I'm not so familiar with community mediation centers. I'm more into privacy, but I was just hearing for that 1 minute about community mediation centers. Yeah, I mean, it sounds very useful, and I don't want to speak too much on it because I definitely, you know, I would want to know more before I said any hot takes. So,
Other questions in the room before I jump in? Because I, of course, have more. You know, another question I have for Brittany is thinking through the metaverse. Are there certain types of disputes that you think are more sort of created where the metaverse would be the appropriate place, right? So often we talk about fitting the form to the fuss, fitting the technology to the fuss. Is this the right forum for particular types of disputes?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I do think there are disputes that are going to be very good for the metaverse. For example, I think any type of cyber trespassing that happens there, any harassment or violence that actually occurs within the metaverse, I think should be resolved in the metaverse because that's where that actual harm occurred. If you look in the physical world, obviously we do resolve all the disputes in the physical world, but that's also where that harm occurred. So the harm that we're going to see happen in the metaverse is going to have a different response than the harm that happens to us in the physical world. And because of that, the way that we resolve the dispute has to be within the metaverse as well. I also think any type of like financial fraud that might happen, say with cryptocurrency, because that'll probably be the currency that is used in the metaverse, should also then be resolved in the metaverse because that's where the currency being used is.
Yeah.
I also think any deception that might occur there, yeah, I think all those that happen there should be resolved within the metaverse.
Yeah, I suppose that could be in the sort of trust, right? So people who are already operating in the metaverse are going to trust it more than someone who's never used it before, right? So we find that often when we think about sort of where you want to have things resolved, which kind of this question of trust. So going back to Chika on kind of AI and trusting the AI, I liked what you said in looking at sort of people trusting robots more than they trust humans. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that. I mean, that's a really interesting and provocative truth. Why do you think it is? And do you think age plays a part?
Oh, I never actually thought about the age aspect. I think probably just because like my generation kind of grew up with technology up and coming and it was always kind of part of us. But I think overall it's just because they're not human. Like they can't judge. They don't judge. And like, even if you have a person in front of you saying like, no matter what you say, I won't judge you for it. It's like, it's a person. They won't tell you they're judging you for it. Like, because I've been in mediation and I've told them I'm neutral. And then in my mind I was thinking, this person is just so wrong. You know, of course I didn't say that, but it happens because I am a human. But now that you mentioned like the whole age dynamic as well, I do think people of maybe that didn't grow up as much with the technology up and coming and always new and always like changing things are probably a little bit more skeptical of it. So maybe they don't actually trust technology as much or robots as much in some ways.
Not privacy related, but just on that topic, maybe an opposite view would be in Japan. I think they have a lot of robots that work actually with the elderly there, and so there, I mean, maybe it depends on location, but sometimes elderly are alone and need some, companionship. Not necessarily in the dispute resolution sense, but could be that older people would actually like some of the online, or interacting with AI. So.
Oh yeah, and even like building in like natural language processing to help different individuals, who maybe don't, typing is difficult or whatever, there's a lot where we can use AI for all sorts of things, including natural language processing, different languages. It also brings in the metaverse. I was listening to an NPR, it was talking about use of the metaverse to help with elderly to feel like they can go play bridge with others in the metaverse. We could see that happening, and AI and using AI to make life more simple. These are all different ways that, it could actually help emotional health. I think we hear so much about how technology pulls us apart and isolates us, but there's also ways it can bring us together. But on that note, do any of the panelists, do any of you have any sort of warnings or concerns about these topics that you think, oh, these are areas, or this is a concern where, we just really need to be careful when we do peek into the future and not get too excited about technology?
I can jump in if nobody has anything to say right off the bat. I'll say with AI, of course, it mimics human intelligence. So you feed in data, it collects that data, it learns from that data. So if you feed in biased data, the AI will now become biased. I think that's my biggest concern about it. Of course, there are ways you can back end data as well, but the same way a human can be biased, AI can now be biased. And I think that's like the worst possible use of AI. So I think that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, and you're baking in the bias forever and ever and ever. Yeah. Last words on concerns. Yeah, what do you think, Noah?
I mean, there's obviously a ton of privacy questions, and a lot of that comes from just, I think not thinking about privacy, and even in like surprising places. Like I mentioned in my talk about how if you're using, sort of a standard code from somewhere else, a lot of that standard code for app development automatically collects, location data. And so there's just a lot of things that if you're not careful and if you're not looking at things, if you're not thinking through, do we really need this? Then and you might not even know you're collecting it, so it's just on the privacy front, it's really important to think through what are we doing, what are we actually collecting, and why do we need it, and thinking through those questions are crucial. So
yeah. Brittany, should we be afraid? Very afraid?
Metaverse, I actually am a little afraid just because of how quickly everything is happening with the metaverse and how fast we even saw Facebook, for example, jump onto it. I think it's going to be here a lot faster than a lot of people do think, even though that might be quite a few years away. And because of that, the fact that there aren't a ton of people talking about it right now, there aren't any laws that have been created yet, there aren't any rules or regulations. I think that's a huge concern because we're already seeing disputes arising. We're already seeing sexual assaults happening or harassment and things like that. And so if we're already seeing them this early on, it's going to increase very quickly. So I think the big concern is just the fact that there is a lack of laws and regulations.
Yeah, we'll have to figure. Much to be seen. Well, I know that some of the panelists have to run to class, so I don't want to keep you past class time. I would get in trouble with other professors. So I just want to thank you guys. That was really illuminating, and it was just a fantastic presentation. I really learned a lot, and thank you big time. I really do appreciate it very much. And everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you, everybody, for attending this session of Cyberweek. This was fantastic and the highlight of my day and week. So thank you guys. I really do appreciate it.